Hey all, this is Arthur, big and tall white guy with way too much red hair, and I identify as neurodiverse. I'm here with kind of an update on the project I've been doing on trying to make like one continuous river in of sushi belt madness in Factorio. It's been a minute. I mean, we've been super busy here, so real life got distracting, which is always a good thing. But as I was doing it, it ended up being pretty good because in the back of my head, I was thinking through some of the big problems I had with the video I had posted a couple months ago, or the solution I had made a video of. It had two major problems. The first is that all of the three major problems. The first is that all the items are going in one direction, right? And so that means every time something's added to the belt, if the thing that needs that item is on the other side of it, it's going to have to do one entire rotation before it can get to where it's needed. The second problem is once I connected the full loop, it was really hard to add new sections to it because I had to stop the whole thing in order to divert the flow into a new section, which screwed up all the counting. And the third problem is I forgot. So maybe it was only two problems. Anyway, so I've redesigned it so that instead of 16 lanes, or I guess 16 belts going in one direction, it's now 8 belts going in one direction and 8 belts going in the opposite direction, all linked up together. I'm calling this the lazy river build. As you can see, I've got this nice little counter system similar to before, but this offers 100% flow through support for the items kind of making it through this little shuffler. I've also made it so each counter counts 550 items sitting on that belt at any given second. And I put the counter so that there's a separate one on each end that don't talk to each other. And as it feeds its count information on an audit as to what's in the, on the belt at any particular second, it's feeding that through from both ends of the belt. So it's going to connect through 550 from one side and 550 from the same kind of little mixer tool on the other end. And through that, we're getting about 1100 item sample. And that makes things kind of easy when I sit here. Again, I'm not really messing with ratios. It's not about how many are made. It's about how many are sitting on the belt. And so it's really a question of just how many of these surplus would I want sitting on a belt at any given time from where it's being created. Otherwise, it uses a lot of the similar designs that I had made from the other experiment. Only I had to, I put a little bit extra logic in there. I got the flow throughs to work a little better. And since the items are going both directions at any given time, I don't have to worry about any kind of sequences or sequentialism. And so I can literally plop things down next to each other, and it's not just quote unquote cheating and just passing it into the next thing because half of its output is being sent the other direction. But it also means there's a lot more regularity with the distribution on the belts so that it's being sent in both directions, and at each of those switch over areas, 50% is going on to the next section, 50% is coming back into the same section it was generated from, and it just makes a really interesting and well shuffled mix. Right now I've built this up enough so it's building most of its own materials, or at least like the belt materials. So this is capable of making its own belts, underground belts, splitters, and the inserters. Next I'm going to focus on being able to build like the factories and the other self components, and then kind of see what's left over after all that. Some solutions, I also made sure that if there were different levels of quality on the belt, so like these wood items, I've got the basic wood recipe set up for if there's no wood. But if there's plenty of wood, then it's going to try to be making it out of the more difficult recipe, which includes making fertilizer, which is a really complicated item. I hadn't even bothered making it in the space beforehand. But it was a fun little puzzle to solve. And unlike the previous design, which also used that recipe, it never actually generated the fertilizer. But this, about like 2 minutes after I flipped on the switch, it was already generating it. So again, having that belt distribution and it constantly shuffling back in on itself has made sure that items are getting very well distributed across the entire network. And so that was a lot of fun. The other big challenge on the other belt was, steel barrels are extremely important for this build because all liquids are also going on the belt. Everything is being handled from barreling, which means that I need a lot of barrels. Half of what we're looking at right now is designed just to make steel because steel is such a complicated thing in this mod environment, which again is space exploration, Krastorio 2, and BZ ores. But it's pumping it out like nobody's business. It's doing a great job. Here's the refinery. I'm really only focusing on heavy oil because at the end of the day I can frack down heavy oil to the other main oil components, right? So as long as I'm making heavy oil here, everything else I can kind of make as the build demands. And again, I can plop down other things. So if I find that something way later down the line has petroleum problems, I can just prop down a petroleum fracker and it should do just fine. Up here, so all these are connected all the way through to this side, so that's why it's sampling 1100 instead of just 550. This again, so I'm calling this the bi-directional 16 belt throughput-unlimited balancer. It's mathematically balanced. It's mathematically throughput unlimited. You can see here even half the throughput is limited right now. But, it's like it's blocked off, and yet the whole thing is still able to run. That was a lot of fun to figure out. It turns out I did need these space exploration extended underground belt lengths because I don't think this is possible to build in vanilla, or at least not in lane the way that I had it. But it may be kind of big and ugly, but it's great because then I can just build as much as I want. And whenever I feel like I'm done with this section, I'll plop this down as an end cap, and then the whole belt just accepts the new input. It doesn't unbalance from having all that empty space because only 50% of the output is going to the new belt. And so it catches up quite quickly. And it's just, it turns really elegant, and I can just extend in both directions forever. As long as I never connect the two ends and close the loop, I can add more and more sections to this factory and let it grow as ridiculously long as I want. So this has been really fun, and honestly, I really like the solution. I feel like there might be one more step I need to take, which is to centralize the item count. And to try to better measure how items are being distributed in the sections that are further away from where they're being generated. But largely speaking, I'm really pleased with this. I'm going to continue expanding it out, and we'll see if I stay happy with it long enough to actually get to a point where I'm launching a rocket with this madness. So in the meantime, we're just going to let you enjoy the fiddly bits.